Welcome back to this three-part video series on how to take control of your financial future. This is video number 2. Now, the first principle I shared with you in video number 1 was to take control of your finances. Principle number 2 is to set yourself a budget. Now, in my experience, most people don't have a budget. And those that do, they have one that is cumbersome and unworkable, and so it's completely ineffective. Now, I can't blame them because no one teaches us this stuff at school. Budgeting is really important for the following reasons. It prevents us from wasting money. It helps us stay in the black, so it helps us avoid getting into debt. And it helps us plan for financial emergencies. So what is a budget? A budget is a financial plan that allocates future income against future expenses. Do you have a budget? If so, in what way do you find it helpful to your situation? What should a good budget even look like? Well, the first thing, it has to be realistic. If you set yourself a budget that is completely unrealistic, you will only find that it demotivates you rather than keeping you on track. The other thing about a good budget is that it needs to be simple and easy to use. Most people do not want to spend much time administering their finances. Now, a simple and easy to use budget will take you about 15 minutes to administer every week. Now, just imagine how much time that will free up if you have a simple and easy to use budget. I always say you should do preventative budgeting rather than detective budgeting. Detective budgeting is where you sit and add up all your receipts, looking at what you've been spending your money on, and then adjusting your budget accordingly. Preventative budgeting, on the other hand, is determining a realistic budget upfront and then spending according to that budgeting. So if you know you're allowed £45 a week for your groceries, that is what you stick to. You no longer have to do the detective work. You no longer have to add up your receipts every week to see if you stuck to your budget, because up front you know you have stuck to your budget. The other thing about a budget is that you should budget for large, annual, or once-off expenditure. A lot of people get taken by surprise when they get their annual insurance bill or even their annual MOT for their car. What you should be doing instead is setting aside the monthly amount which will then pay for that annual expenditure. This applies to your holidays as well, house maintenance, and all the other things that occur annually or that are large or once-off or occasional. The other thing is that you should budget monthly if your income is monthly. If your income is weekly, then budget weekly. Do be careful if you are budgeting monthly that you take the exact number of weeks in that month into account. There is no month other than February that is exactly 4 weeks. So you need to be exact about the number of weeks in the month so you don't get yourself into hot water. A good budget will show you areas where you need to cut down your costs. It will also show you potential ways of boosting your income. Now, I remember one of my students coming to me and being absolutely horrified when she realized she was still paying for a gym membership that she thought she'd cancelled years ago. So it pays to sit down and do your budget, see what's going through your bank statements, and make sure you're on top of your finances. Now, a good budget will allow you to enjoy your money within the constraints of these money management principles I'm sharing with you. A lot of the time, my students think I'm going to put a stop to their spending fun. But actually, when they sit down and do a good budget, one that takes personal spending into account, entertainment, a holiday fund, they soon realize that they can have a little bit of everything. Sure, maybe not as much as they would like, but they can have a little bit of everything. Plus, they no longer have the stress of whether they're actually living in the black. They'll have the funds there for when they want to go on holiday or when they want to go out to eat or whatever the case may be. Now, a good budget is only effective if you stick to it. There are many techniques for sticking to your budget. You may have some already, but I'll just suggest a few just in case you don't. Now, the first is to pay as much as you can by direct debit, and to do that within the first 3 days of being paid or of your income coming into your bank account. That means that whatever's left in the bank account is really for your weekly expenses, the ad hoc things. And as I mentioned earlier, you need to plan for that large, occasional, annual or once-off expenditure by setting aside money every month. I would draw that up again as a direct debit. You can use things like virtual envelopes. That is really where, if you do online banking, you can set up virtual accounts and you can rename them holiday fund, car MOT, annual insurance, and drip feed into those accounts every month, so that when you need to pay that large expense, you've got the money in your virtual envelope. Some people use physical envelopes, for example, their gas and electricity bill. You can do that too. Of course, you don't want large amounts of cash lying around the house, so really just do that for the smaller weekly expenses like your groceries or your entertainment or even your personal spending. I would say that of all the money management principles, budgeting really is the most crucial. So let me encourage you, go out there and draw up your budget. Right, now we're going to move on to principle number 3, planning for the future. Now, life throws many unexpected financial emergencies at us. If we don't plan for those, we can land ourselves in hot water. We can land up in debt. Now, why should we plan? We should be planning for these financial emergencies, like I've said, but we should also be planning for our retirement. Do you know, we live up to 1/3 of our lives in retirement, and if we don't plan adequately for those retirement years, we can have a very poor quality of life in that time of life when really we should be enjoying ourselves. We should also be planning for our children's education and, of course, for buying a house. So what are the main ways we can save for our retirement? We can take out a pension plan. We can have our own savings and investments, and of course, we can continually earn. Now, the thing is, you don't want to be working at the age of 65 because you have to. You want to be working at the age of 65 because you want to. Now, according to Consumer Body Which, you are likely to be relatively poor in your retirement years if you rely on a state pension only. According to Which, again, they say the wealthiest pensioners are those who have their own pension plan as well as income from their own savings and investments. So what are some savings and investments we should be looking at? Well, cash and cash equivalents, for example, savings accounts or cash ISAs, bonds or gilts. Then there are equities, for example, shares, purchasing them via the stock exchange or via some fund. Then, of course, there's property. You can invest in property. And lastly, of course, you can have money coming in via your own business. A balanced portfolio, or a well-diversified one in which the risk is spread, will have investments in cash and cash equivalents, equities, and property. So that's really where you need to be focusing your time and your energy on. All these types of investments can either be short-term, medium-term, or long-term in nature. A short-term investment is really one which you can hold for 0 months up to a year. A good example would be an instant access cash ISA or an instant access savings account. Medium-term investments are those which you hold for a period of 1 through to 5 years. An example would be a notice deposit or a term deposit or a term-based ISA, cash ISA. Then, of course, your long-term investments are anything that you would hold for over 5 years. For example, property, as well as shares or equities. It's really important that you sit down and take the time to plan for your retirement and to plan for your future. You know, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you will never imagine that one day you will be retired. But you know, life goes very quickly, and if you don't prepare for that, it will be very hard to take control of your financial future later on down the line. So principle number 3, plan for your future. This marks the end of video 2. In the last video, we're going to be talking about the last principle, principle number 4, for taking control of your financial future.